You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sarah J. Loureiro.
Welcome back to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. It is only fitting that I record this episode at the end of a absolutely wild, incredible, an amazing year, just that I can truly show you how much can happen in a year. And so at the end of 2022, I was in a very crazy time in my life, a very tumultuous time in my personal life. Didn't really know where I wanted to live, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And for the beginning of 2023, to be completely honest with you, I usually have these really beautiful, great plans for the new year. And I remember at the end of last year, I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to see how next year goes. So there was never a next year is going to be the best year of my life type of scenarios for me. I was like, I just need to see how everything plays out. So I was like, God, the universe, just show me how things can play out. I'm just going to trust you to take the wheel. And there are a few other things, especially in business, because this is the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, that I decided on very early on in 2023. So one of the first things that I truly figured out at the end of 2022 that I really wanted to step into was I knew I no longer wanted to live where I was living. And I knew that living there as a family was going to be causing us more harm than good in the long run. And I just was not willing to put up with that anymore. And so that was a very big stipulation for me. Just wasn't going to live there anymore. And I knew that 2023 was going to be the deciding year in terms of where we moved, where we decided to live afterwards. And there were a few different ideas on the table. And truly where we live now was completely out of left field. Didn't really expect it. Didn't really expect to be exactly where I am right now at the end of the year, but I am just so, so grateful. And a part of the reason why I'm also so grateful for all of that time is because I came into 2023 knowing that I wanted to increase my income and that I wanted to increase my impact. And for the first time in a long time, I actually had a reason for it. I had a really important, very strong why within myself, because before this year, I had never really desired a seven-figure business. I had never really thought, okay, yeah, that's something that I really want, and that's something that I want sooner rather than later. And so through going through a lot of hardships at the end of 2022, it really helped me to find clarity and focus in terms of where I wanted to take my life next. And coming back from it, it's just so funny because I literally just had a conversation about this with a close friend of mine before even coming on here and recording this podcast. But through all of those hardships, created an immense sense of opportunity for me, an immense sense of opportunity for my own creativity. And I remember my friend just told me, she's like, do you remember where we were at the end of last year? Do you remember how crazy our lives were? And look at us now. So much can change in a year. So much can change. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, from January to December. It could be from July to July. It could be, it could be at any point in time. You could have this revelation. You can create something completely different for yourself. And so I was in Canada at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. And when I came back to Nicaragua, I knew that one, I didn't want to live where I was living. And also two, I wanted to really expand my business. And so at that point in time, I just kind of told myself, and it's kind of funny even thinking about this in retrospect, but I just kind of told myself, we're just going to go big or we're going to go home. So we're just going to give this everything we've got. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Gonna go home. I'll take on the business the same way that I've taken it on before, but at least I want to try. And I want to try, and I want to give myself the opportunity to see just how much I can push myself and just how much I can hit my full potential. And so that was That was a really big desire that I had in the beginning of 2023. I had no idea what was going to happen with my life, but that's something that I wanted to see how it was going to play out. And so in this whole go big or go home type of mentality, and like I say, how to truly change your life in 1 year, what I really needed to do is I needed to do everything that felt very contrary to anything that felt comfortable or anything that even felt self-soothing. And I think this is a really important point here, is that normally the internet romanticizes growth, and we romanticize growth as this like happy, bubbly thing. Whereas in reality, growth is actually very painful because it's not comfortable at all. And it's something that's really scary, and it's something that comes with a lot of thorns, and it comes with a lot of navigating relationships, navigating judgments, navigating criticisms, and even relationships, judgments, and criticisms that you have on yourself. So when we talk about growth, and especially when we talk about growth in the personal development space, we think it's going to be sunshine and rainbows because growth is going to be so exciting because it's going to get us to this other place where we're feeling so much better about ourselves. But in order to get to another place where we're feeling so much better about ourselves, we truly need to set ourselves on fire. And we need to put ourselves on that cliff, essentially, and really see all of our fears eye to eye to understand that they were just fears to begin with, and they weren't actually something that we really needed to be afraid of. And a lot of discomfort also comes from, embracing boring and embracing monotony and embracing things that just where you just are like, I don't want to do the same thing over and over and over again. You need to define what it is that is your discomfort and what it is that is your fear, and truly ask yourself what it's going to be in order to face that head on. And so for me and for my business, my biggest fear was scaling my business, but then having my business expenses and my business operations being more money than the revenue that I generated. And this has always been a huge fear for me. And so that's why I felt very comfortable, and I felt very comfortable up until the end of 2022, spending a specific amount of money in my business. And I never really went that much higher than the amount that I was already spending at the end of 2022, just because I was already really comfortable there. And I was afraid to. I was afraid to spend any more money. And I knew in 2023 that if I really wanted to take things to the next level, I was going to have to put a lot more risk into it. And that was probably one of the biggest things. And as I look at my profit and loss statements for every month of 2023, it's interesting because January was actually my lowest month in business. It was the lowest cash generating month, and it was also the lowest month in terms of my operational costs. And February was really the month where I started to go all in. And by March, I started making $80,000 months. And with that also came a jump in operational costs in my business. And so I managed to keep my profit margins really, really good for this year. I'm actually quite impressed with it as well. But one thing that I needed to regulate inside of my nervous system was to be okay with higher operational costs. And I knew for myself, and luckily I had really incredible mentors this year. And this is why I will, at this stage in my business, I will never go without a coach. I need to have a coach consistently every single step of the way. But I was so lucky and grateful that I had access to them for them to tell me, oh yes, these things are normal. And one of the biggest things that they told me in terms of the shifts that I would need to make was to take on more team members, because I wasn't going to be able to do all of this on my own. And I definitely didn't want to do it all on my own, especially because I still wanted to travel. I still wanted to spend a lot of time with my husband and with my child. And I wanted to have a whole bunch of different holidays that I already had scheduled in for the year. And so I knew that it was time. I knew it was time for me to buckle up and like truly position myself as the CEO of a company versus a solopreneur who just had like a few assistants working in her business. And that was probably the scariest thing that I had ever had to face before in business, was just dealing with higher operational costs. And with those higher operational costs, then I had to face another fear, which was high volumes of clients. And with higher volumes of clients, you also get, still a very low percentage, but you also get a percentage of clients who are not happy with you or who want to run your business by their own rules. And so those were two of my biggest fears that I had to face head on. And I'm just sitting at the end of this year and I'm just so glad that I did it. I'm so, so glad. And I cannot express this enough, that going through all of that was so worth it. And even when I was in like really, really hard times, when I had to fire someone on my team or had to step it up in a different way, or I had a strategy that wasn't working for me, I always told all of my business friends, you know what? I'd rather be here than be where I was last year. I'd rather be here than be in that comfort zone that I was in last year, because at least now I know what here feels like and I understand what it's like to be here. And so, if I don't want to be here next year, if I don't want to scale this much next year, I won't. That's fine. I'll just go back. I'll go back to, a $200,000 to $300,000 a year, be like super, super grateful about it. Still really great. It's still really great work that I'm doing. I still get to, record my podcast and do my content and show up for my people. But got to be honest with you guys, being here and being at this place where I got to completely change everything that I've been doing has been the greatest gift. And being on the other side of it and now like seeing everything in retrospect, all of those hardships really made me grow. They really made me get thicker skin. And now I think the most amazing thing about it is I now increase my energetic thermostat around money. And this is something that I talk to my clients about so often, especially my advanced clients. But when you are wanting to get up to a new income level, you have to regulate your nervous system around that income level, the same way that you also have to regulate your nervous system around the expenses that you're going to have at that level. And I knew in the beginning when I first started to expand and when I first started to really level up, those expenses terrified me. Those expenses, I was like, well, what if 1 month I don't make this money? What if 1 month I don't sign any clients? Then what's going to happen? Then I'm going to be in the red. And it's interesting because I've never had any months in the red, and I've always profited significantly more than I've, had to pay out in operations costs. And so being at the end of this year and seeing that, now I can normalize it. And now I can normalize the operational expenses that I have as something that's completely normal, right? It's completely normal for me to carry on these operational costs month to month, because now I see and I've seen the proof in the profits month after month after month. And now that I'm regulated around this amount, the most beautiful thing that happens is that now this becomes a new comfort zone, and this becomes a new normal, where if I go below this now, that is going to feel crappier. And I'm very likely, and anyone who increases their level and their standard for living is very likely to decrease that standard for themselves, because you have already created a level of comfort around a new normal. So I went from having a 2-person team to having a 6-person team. I went from signing on 4 or 5 new clients a month to signing on 10 to 15 new clients every month. And I went from going on maybe 1 or 2 holidays a year to going on 5 or 6 holidays a year. And I also went from not being super happy and excited about where I was living to being totally in love with my new home and my new neighborhood and my new environment. And looking back and just seeing the possibilities now, it's just like, well, why wouldn't you do this for yourself? Why wouldn't you increase your standards, right? Why wouldn't you want to have a higher standard for yourself. And so if you are thinking about this right now, and if you're kind of sitting in an area of your life where you're just like, well, so many things are just blah. So many things are not the way that I really want them to be. I would take a very hard look at everything that you have in your life and ask yourself where you are being complacent in it. If you have a partnership or a relationship that isn't fulfilling all of your needs, where are you being complacent? Where are you not adequately discussing that and also standing up for yourself and for your needs? If you are being complacent with yourself and with your own habits and your own healthy habits and your own routines for your own wellness, then you want to sit down and reflect and ask yourself, where do I need to step it up for myself? Where do I need to step things up to? Who do I need to become in order to have a life that's completely unrecognizable to me in a year? If it's in your business, ask yourself, where am I still holding back? Where am I still not allowing myself to play a bigger game? Where am I being complacent where I really just want to soar, where I really just want to fly, where I really just want to become extraordinary? And what are the beliefs and habits and even environmental factors that I continue to be a part of that aren't conducive to my growth? And I think that this is a really, really big and important factor here, is that oftentimes we can have this really, really great, grandiose idea for our lives and for what we want our lives to look like, but we're still banking on and still holding on to these ideas for our lives that our immediate family or our society or even our culture has dictated for us. And the only reason why we're holding on to that is because it's what we were raised with, and it's because that's what keeps the community together, right? It's what keeps that sense of belonging for you to be inside of that community. If all of your friends are going out to McDonald's and that's where you all hang out, then the minute that you're like, hey, I don't want to hang out at McDonald's anymore, I don't want to eat this crap food, I don't want to put this in my body, then you're isolated, you're ousted, right? Where are you going to go? Now you don't have your circle of friends anymore because you no longer hang out in that place and in that environment that you know isn't conducive to your growth. And so a lot of the times what we need to do is we need to take a very hard look at that environment and ask ourselves, is this environment that I'm in, whether it's environment I chose for myself or was chosen for me at birth, is this environment conducive to my growth? Yes or no? And it's a very simple question, and it's a very complicated and hard answer. I mean, the answer is a yes or no answer, but the reality of that answer, and once you come to terms with that answer, that reality is actually a lot harder to face, because then you have to go through processes in order to ensure that you are in a really great environment. And so I'm going to be honest with you. I was never in an environment that was conducive for me to make 7 figures in a year, ever. And I definitely do not have a cultural upbringing that would have encouraged that for me at all. So I needed to take myself out of those environments. I needed to actively remove myself from those environments in order to drastically change my life in a year. I needed to unsubscribe to everything that I had been taught, everything that I had been raised with, and everything that even some of my closest friends were telling each other on a daily basis in order for me to basically relearn or reprogram my brain into different thoughts and beliefs. This is why it's also so helpful in entrepreneurship to get into programs that are a part of groups, because you can be a part of a group of people who think very differently from the people that you surround yourself with on a daily basis. And you'll find yourself having less and less of those important conversations with people who don't understand. And you'll also find yourself questioning more and more who you are going to be speaking about your big goals and dreams with, because you want to make sure that the only people that you're telling about these drastic changes that you want to make are people who can hold that space for you and people who can actively support you inside of it. And that sometimes is the hardest thing. And if you really, truly want to drastically change your life in a year, that's one of the things that you're going to have to do. Really start to retract yourself from environments where they might not even be toxic environments for you, but they might be toxic to that growth. They might be toxic to that exponential growth. They might be toxic to you drastically changing your life because they are ordinary environments. And in order for someone to drastically change in their life in a year, they need to think about something extraordinary. And the crazy thing is, after you drastically change your life in a year, all you're going to want to do is continue to optimize yourself, continue to hit your own peak performance, continue to see how more you can create or essentially break glass ceilings and create, new paradigms for yourself. And I just feel like I'm just getting started now. So I just feel like what I just created in 2023 is now the bare minimum because I stood up for myself. I stood up for my standards. I stood up for what I wanted to receive in my life, both in business and in my life in general. And I stood up for not accepting anything less. And that was a really difficult shift because I found it in so many different areas of my life. And one of the last areas that I found it was really the boundaries that I had in place in terms of my team members and my clients. And once I worked through all of that, and it was messy, once I worked through all of that, now I can't even fathom going back to that. I can't even fathom going back to that version of myself that was at the end of 2022 who had no idea what she was going to do. And I think that that's such an amazing thing is once you change your life and once you change things for the better, you know that you're never going back. Because now that you know the feeling of feeling valued and feeling important, even for yourself, you won't go back. All you want to do is just create better and bigger and bigger and better. And how can create more of an impact and how can we help more people feel this way? And so that is truly my wish to you. If you could have anything happen next year, what would it be? What do you want? How do you want to feel? How do you want to grow? And what is it going to take for you to get there? What are all of the pains and all of the suffering and all of the tears and all of the sweat? What do you know that is going to be a part of that process that you are ready to endure? I would love to hear from you. If you liked this podcast, it would mean the world for me if you hit subscribe, left a review, and even shared it with your friend. If you want to get back to me about this podcast and let me know exactly what you want for 2024, please reach out to me on Instagram. It's at Sarah without an H, J, Loureiro, Loureiro. I would just absolutely adore to hear from each and every one of you, especially for this episode, because I just love hearing about goals and how you're ready to change your life. So please stay in touch with me. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarahjloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.